The jungle was silent. An oppressive quiet hung in the air, broken only by the distant calls of exotic birds and the buzzing of unseen insects. The dense canopy of emerald leaves filtered the sunlight into a mosaic of light and shadow on the forest floor. It was here, in this seemingly tranquil setting, that a horrifying scene was about to unfold. A piercing scream, raw and primal, tore through the stillness. It was a cry that spoke of pain, of terror, and it carried with it the unspoken warning of a life hanging in the balance. The peaceful tranquility of the jungle was shattered in an instant. Villagers emerged from their homes, their faces etched with worry as they rushed towards the direction of the desperate cry. As they pushed through the thick green shadows, their eyes fell upon a sight that made their hearts skip a beat. Emerging from the bushes was a man, his face contorted in pain. His leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and blood, a dark crimson against the green backdrop, dripped through his fingers. But it was his eyes that truly sent a chill down the spines of the villagers. They were wide with terror, reflecting the horror of the ordeal he had just endured. One glance was enough for the villagers to understand this was no ordinary predicament. They recognized the telltale signs of a snakebite, but the dread in the victim's eyes hinted at something more sinister. As the man collapsed to his knees, the villagers rushed to his aid. Their movements, though hurried, were filled with a sense of urgency born out of experience and grim knowledge. Amongst them were 3 men, each with years etched on their faces, their eyes holding the wisdom of a life deeply intertwined with the jungle. They knew that every second counted. The first man, strong and steady, moved with purpose. His machete flashed in the dappled sunlight as he hacked through the thick undergrowth, creating a path for the others to follow. The second man wasted no time. With a determined look on his face, he ripped his own shirt into strips, his gaze fixed on the wounded man who lay on the ground. The third man, the eldest of the 3, was a healer, his face lined with years of experience and his movements precise and efficient. As he knelt beside the injured man, his fingers worked quickly, crushing wild jungle herbs between his rough palms. They had faced the wrath of the jungle before and knew its dangers intimately. This was no time to panic. Each of them had a role to play, and they were all vital in this desperate race against time. Reaching the man, the elder placed the crushed herbs on the wound. "Hold him still," the healer barked, his voice echoing with authority. The 2 other villagers positioned themselves, ready to do whatever was necessary. The injured man cried out, his body arching off the ground. Pain. It was a good sign, a testament that life still surged within him. But the jungle held many perils, and they knew the fight to keep him alive had just begun. Across the swollen river, a small hut stood nestled amidst the trees. It may have appeared unassuming from a distance, but to these villagers it was a sanctuary of sorts, housing an elixir that could mean the difference between life and death. It contained the antidote, their last hope against the deadliest serpent in the jungle. The story so far has been a heart-pounding journey, a race against time where every second mattered. Now we're about to shift gears, introducing a new character and a different kind of danger. The youngest villager, barely more than a boy, looked at the river, his eyes filled with determination. Though fear gnawed at his heart, he knew his duty. Without hesitation, he took off, his small feet pounding the soft earth, each step carrying him closer to the river's edge. The water was a churning mass of white foam and hidden rocks, roaring with a power that threatened to swallow him whole. He didn't flinch. With a deep breath, he jumped. The icy water enveloped him, pulling him under in a flash. For a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing but the sound of rushing water as the current dragged him along. But the young man fought back, clawing at the water, his lungs burning as he struggled to surface. Finally, he broke through. Gasping for air, his vision blurred with exertion. With trembling arms, he grabbed onto branches, pulling himself onto the far bank. His mission was far from over. He knew that the life of his fellow villager rested on what he did next. Pushing through a screen of thick foliage, he arrived at the healer's hut, his small frame a silhouette against the dim interior. Inside, on a shelf, sat a small clay vial, its contents a murky green, the only remaining antidote to the deadly black fang viper's bite. The boy reached for it, his fingers brushing against the cool clay. In that instant, he knew he wasn't just retrieving a vial, he was holding a lifeline, a symbol of hope against the relentless grip of death. Clutching the vial tightly, he turned back, retracing his steps, the urgency of the situation driving him forward. As he emerged from the trees, the clearing and the sight that met his eyes made his heart sink. The man lay motionless, his breathing shallow, his face ashen. The villagers stood gathered around, their faces etched with worry. The seconds ticked by, each one heavy with foreboding. The boy pushed through the crowd, his small voice ringing with newfound determination. "I have the antidote," he announced, holding up the vial. Hope, fragile as it was, flickered in the eyes of the elders. Quickly, they helped the boy with the task at hand, their movements efficient and practiced. Breaking the seal, they tilted the bitter liquid into the man's mouth. It was a simple action, yet it held within it the weight of countless hopes and prayers. A tense silence descended upon the clearing. All eyes were on the man who lay on the ground. Time seemed to stand still. Was the antidote working, or had the venom already claimed its victim? The minutes crawled by, each one an eternity. And then, miraculously, a flicker of movement, a twitch of the fingers, a rise in the chest. The silence was shattered, not with a scream this time, but with a shaky breath. The man was alive. A wave of relief washed over the villagers, their faces breaking into smiles, their voices rising in cheers. They had won a battle against the most venomous snake in the jungle. A battle fought not just with herbs and vines, but with courage and unwavering determination. Back in the clearing, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation, the tension palpable as they watched the man who lay before them. His eyes fluttered open, glazed and confused at first, but gradually clearing with the return of consciousness. A weak smile touched his lips as he looked at the faces that hovered above him, etched with concern and relief. The healer, his face creased with years of wisdom and experience, leaned closer, his voice raspy yet kind. "How do you feel?" he asked, his eyes searching the man's face for any sign of distress. The man winced, moving his head slightly. "My leg," he rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse. "It hurts." As if summoned by his words, the villagers exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the pain was a sign of the antidote's struggle against the relentless venom coursing through the man's veins. But it was a good pain, a pain that meant he was alive, that he was fighting. The eldest of the villagers, his face bearing the marks of a life well lived, placed a reassuring hand on the man's shoulder. "You are safe now," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "You are among friends." Slowly, the man was helped to sit up, his gaze sweeping over the faces that surrounded him, each etched with a mixture of relief and admiration. He looked at the young boy who had brought the antidote, his eyes filled with gratitude. The boy, who had shown such bravery and presence of mind, blushed under the weight of the man's gaze and the murmurs of appreciation from the villagers. But the ordeal was far from over. As the villagers prepared to help the man back to his home, they knew there was a long road to recovery ahead. The bite of the black fang viper was notorious for its ferocity, and the battle against the venom had just begun. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the jungle floor, the villagers settled around the fire. The rescued man sat among them, his leg bandaged, his face drawn with pain and fatigue. The antidote had worked, but the worst was perhaps yet to come. The black fang viper's venom was known to lay dormant, attacking the body's vital systems. When it was least expected, their rescue mission had been successful, but the true test, they knew, was ensuring the man's recovery. The night wore on, filled with the crackle of the fire and the murmur of voices. The villagers shared stories, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the night, a stark contrast to the day's drama. The man listened, a faint smile touching his lips. He knew he was fortunate to be alive, his survival a testament to the quick reactions and courage of those around him. But as the hours passed, the pain in his leg intensified. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His eyes, wide with discomfort, turned to the healer. "It hurts," he whispered, his voice tight with pain. The healer, his face etched with concern, nodded understandingly. "It is the venom," he said, his voice low and soothing. "It will take time to leave your system." The man sighed, leaning back against the tree. He knew the ordeal was far from over, but he was surrounded by friends, by people who had risked their lives to save his, and in that realization, he found a measure of comfort. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the dense canopy, bathing the jungle floor in a soft, golden light, the man's condition worsened. The pain in his leg was unbearable, and his body, racked with chills, felt as though it were on fire from within. The villagers, ever vigilant, noticed the turn in his condition and sprang into action. The healer, his brow furrowed with concern, adjusted the man's bandages, his touch firm yet gentle. Meanwhile, the eldest of the villagers, his face grave, went inside his hut, emerging with a bundle of herbs. These weren't just any herbs. They were potent jungle plants known for their pain-relieving properties, and the villagers used them liberally. The aroma of crushed leaves filled the air as the eldest mixed the herbs into a poultice, applying it to the man's aching leg. The man cried out, but not from pain, from relief. The poultice brought a momentary respite, and in the lull that followed, the healer spoke, his voice low and reassuring. "You are strong," he told the man, his eyes unwavering. "You will pull through this." As the day progressed, the man's condition stabilized, the worst of the pain receding, replaced by a dull ache. The villagers, relieved but not complacent, continued to monitor him closely, their faces etched with determination. They knew that while the immediate crisis had passed, the fight against the black fang viper's venom was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of activity and care. The man's recovery was slow, each day bringing its own challenges and triumphs. The villagers, like steadfast sentinels, stood by him, offering their support and traditional remedies. Their unity, their shared purpose, became a source of strength, turning a potential tragedy into a story of survival and resilience. Finally, the day arrived when the man was deemed well enough to return to his daily routine. His leg was still healing, but the worst of the ordeal had passed. As he rejoined his community, he was met with cheers, his face breaking into a wide grin. Looking at the smiling faces around him, he knew he wasn't just recovering from a snake bite. He was regaining his life, his friends, his community, all of which had been threatened by the viper's deadly strike. The bite of the Black Fang viper was infamous for its lethality, and he had stared death in the face and emerged victorious. The story wasn't just his testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of community, and the indomitable will to survive. As he walked among his neighbors, he saw not just friends and community members, but heroes. Those who had stood by him in his darkest hour. Those who had fought alongside him to keep him alive. The memory of the ordeal would stay with him, a reminder of his fragility, yes, but also of the unwavering strength and solidarity of the human spirit. He had survived the wrath of the jungle, and in doing so, he had become part of its lore. A living testament to the age-old adage, where life hangs in the balance, courage is the heartbeat that keeps us going. And that's all for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this thrilling tale of survival against all odds. If you want to see more stories like this, please subscribe, like and comment on Jungle Echoes Rescue and Mystery. Your engagement helps us bring more gripping tales of adventure, courage, and the untamed beauty of the natural world. Until next time, stay curious, stay adventurous, and remember, in the face of danger, courage is the greatest antidote of all.